Hello YouTube, this is Marco. I'm your local watch cardinal bringing you another video today on what I would consider to be perhaps a pretty controversial topic within the context of the watch industry and the watch market, and that being, of course, is the dress watch genre dying? I know, pretty crazy take considering half of the watch market, or a significant part of it at least, is made up of dress watches. Of course, before we begin, I'd invite you to like the video and to subscribe for more videos in the future. So with respect to the dress genre, I think it's an interesting analysis given our current situation as a result of kind of COVID lockdowns, right? We're forced to the confines of our own home, and so we don't really have a need or a desire to wear a dress watch because unfortunately the attire we're wearing is all too informal. And so as a result, what we've seen, at least, or what I've seen in the watch market, are sports watches starting to sell for all-time high prices. I mean, forget Rolex, Patek, AP, Richard Mille, and the likes. I mean, I'm talking about Tag Heuer, Breitling, Omega, and even Panerai. They've started increasing in value. I mean, the same Pam that I bought is up a significant amount of money since the time that I bought it back in April of 2020. So ultimately, I think it's a pretty interesting analysis to consider the fact that sports watches are kind of reaching an all-time high, whereas what you've seen is in the dress watch market, at least, is prices kind of tanking, and it's unbelievable. I mean, some Pateks can be picked up nowadays around the 15 to 20,000 Canadian dollar range, which I've never seen that in the past. Not in historical analysis. Of course, we're talking about inflation-related dollars, but still, nonetheless, it's still a crazy price considering the watch that you're getting. So ultimately, my question is the dress watch genre dying? Well, it's an interesting kind of subject because for me personally, obviously, I am still very young. I don't have a huge or significant watch collection. I haven't spent a significant amount of money like many of you have here on in the watch collecting community. But what I would say is I don't ever see myself owning simply a dress watch or a watch that can only be worn in kind of dressy settings. You know, even for example, a JLC Reverso, as quote unquote sporty as it might be, I don't even see myself ever owning one because I just don't feel it is worth it. I mean, we're talking about tying up really a significant amount of money in a watch that I would wear so infrequently. So why not just put that cash towards something that I can use every day or perhaps on the weekend and have fun with, instead of kind of keeping all my cash tied up in a watch to kind of fit a specific need, and that need being so infrequent in terms of the wear I would have throughout the year. So I think that the dress watch genre is headed for dire times, actually, especially with these kind of more informal generation like myself, who doesn't really like to wear suits and ties and things of that nature, because ultimately, I mean, at least with respect to the current living situation we're facing, we prefer to wear much more casual clothing. And so sports watches fit that bill kind of perfectly. I think it's also very, very interesting to see kind of how the dress watch market has evolved over time. Ultimately, we've been seeing kind of dress watches stray away from, I would say, their original kind of design language and DNA. They're going into more the sporty dress watches, I would almost say. And to me, it doesn't really reflect well on the dress watch. I think that a lot of dress watches are almost trying to be something that they're not. And I just don't understand it because they're kind of stuck in the middle, if I can use that expression, in that they're trying to be a sports watch and a dress watch at the same time, and yet they're ineffectively completing both. So I think that there has to be kind of this correction, in my opinion, in terms of the design and execution of a lot of dress watches on the dress watch market, because they're trying to be a sports watch and a dress watch, but it just doesn't make sense considering that they're not competing with sports watches and they're not competing with dress watches. So where exactly are you competing, or where do you fit in the context of the watch industry? Another thing I'd like to point out is, of course, the declining prices of dress watches. As I mentioned earlier, the price of Patek Philippe, especially their dress watches, is their entry level ones at least, has hit significant lows. I mean, we're talking about the likes of Vacheron, Breguet, AP, even their jewel collection from AP. I mean, these are not cheap watches at retail, but they take a significant hit on the secondary market. And so what does that say? Well, I mean, it's most watch prices, at least on the secondary market, are the market prices of the watches, right? The real market price of the watches, they're based on supply and, of course, demand. And the demand for these watches is ultimately very, very low, given the fact that a lot of these watches are selling, I mean, almost for 50% off, and sometimes even more than 50% off of their retail price, which to me is kind of mind blowing to think about for a watch with, especially the cachet of the likes of kind of these major brands that I mentioned before. So I think it's interesting to take a look at the dress watch market. I think if you're in the market for a dress watch, I would definitely consider picking one up either now or in the near future, because prices are so low that I think that there's no way that they won't rebound eventually. And so at the moment, they're a really great buying opportunity. But overall, I think it's fascinating to me to see the trends of the watch market and see that the watch market overall is kind of straying away from the dress watch market and going more towards sports watches, which is crazy to think about because not even, I would say, 10, 20 years ago, that really wasn't the case, right? The dress watch market really dominated the entire watch world. It was really about dress watches, whereas sports watches were kind of your weekend beaters. And so I would definitely say that the sports watch market, if that's what you're into, has a bright future ahead of us because a lot more brands are going to become more avid kind of producers of sports watches as a result of this increased interest in the sports watch market as opposed to the dress watch. And so they'll be providing a lot less resources and a lot less, I would say, supply to dress watches as opposed to kind of sports watches and their sports watch ranges. So again, interesting things to think about. Just a very quick, brief, short video. I wanted to give my thoughts on the topic. Of course, feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think. Is the dress watch market dying? Is it here to stay? Will it rebound? I have no idea, but these are just my thoughts and my opinions. Of course, again, I'd like to invite you to like the video, to subscribe for more in the future. This is Marco. I'm your local watch cardinal, and I'll see you guys in the next video.